Good afternoon and welcome to Monday, March 20th, 2023's Community Development Committee meeting. It's 1 p.m. approximately, and Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Gallagher.
Here. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Gallagher is absent. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you.
And let the record reflect that Councilmember Miller is also in attendance.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one has signed in for public comment.
Thank you. There are minutes from the meeting of January 30th. Has anyone among our body had a chance to read those?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With no oppositions, the minutes are approved. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-0041, awarding a total sum not to exceed $25,000 to Burton Bell Carr Development Incorporated for the Tenant Engagement and Quality Housing Program from the District 9 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Is there someone here to speak from Burton Bell Carr today? Linda, are you? Who do I see out there? I can't see who I see. There's a little glare. Who?
Hi there.
Hi, if you'll identify yourself and give us your title and then your presentation, please.
Okay. Meg Weingart, and I am here representing the Tenant Engagement and Quality Housing Program. It's a joint program with Burton Bell Carr. I'm with the Morelands Group, a committee of Shaker Square Alliance. We sent a PowerPoint. Is that available?
And there we go.
Oh, there we go. All right, great. So we have five slides here, and I'll take you through them. This is a joint program, as I said, between the Shaker Square Alliance, Morelands Group, and Burton Bell Carr, the Community Development Corporation. We have a footprint that is around Shaker Square. It consists of 80 buildings, which have 2,000 units of affordable housing apartments. And these are units that it's in an historic district, and they are at risk of decay because of, we can turn to the next slide, please. I think everyone's heard in the.
Sharon is going to show you.
Okay. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Can two people be up here at once or not? Okay. Ron. Okay. And also, Ron James is going to say some things too. You can see in this slide a door that is broken, and there's trash, and so there's really, everyone's heard in the news the impact of predatory speculation, and these properties are getting drained of their value. There's high tax delinquency, and they're in poor condition. And as I said, about 2,000 low or moderate income people are served within this community, and half of them live in distressed housing. This next slide, please. It says timing and funding, but I want to talk now also about tenant engagement, and there are tenants' rights and code enforcement go hand in hand. So empowered tenants in this area through our work that we've been working together have forged a partnership with the Department of Building and Housing, and it has linked tenants' rights to effective code enforcement. This work, we have recently learned that we got supported by a grant from the George Gunn Foundation that's providing partial support, and we still need the $25,000 request from the county to supplement this in order to move forward. So, Sharita, do you you want to add something on to that? No? Okay. So why county support is so crucial, this impacts a significant concentration of affordable housing, which we all have been hearing so much about. Stabilization of this apartment corridor complements the revival work of Greater Buckeye and Woodland and Shaker Square. And so the grant of the county money will round out the first year budget. And the scope of this project, as I just said, it's impact initiatives in adjacent areas, including the rebirth of Buckeye. This is a walkable community in the, that has great important benefits for the environment, and it's just a great place for the people who live and work and take public transportation to their jobs. It's a really special area. You don't want to let it get squandered. And then our last slide is, this is a catalyst for future initiatives. So just treatment of tenants and code enforcement has a stabilizing effect on the community. And so the project will show the value of preserving and sustainable, affordable rental housing. And without a focused initiative, market forces have proven to play into the pockets of those who are seeking to extract value, which we don't want. So it enforce the landmark district will shape reinvestment, and everyone will come together. Tenants, owners, neighbors, merchants are all stakeholders working to preserve this jewel of a neighborhood that is walkable and with parks and groceries. And this project is to go toward hiring someone to work together, work with Burton Bell Carr, and doing the work, this community work of the Morelands Group. So with that, Sharita, if you have something to add, and then also I was hoping Ron James, who's a tenant, would say a couple words if we still have a few moments. And I don't know how this works. Do you ask questions? Okay. Sure.
And you can ask questions if you have a few questions for us, but first I'd like to allow my colleagues to ask you questions. Ms. Simon, Mr. Kelly, Mr. President, questions?
I will have a question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So the question I have with this allocation, if we're to go through council for $25,000 to hire somebody, what happens next year or the year after? Do you just want to employ somebody for 1 year, or what's the plan?
Yes, this is money toward hiring someone this first year. That we have other grant applications toward 2 years. But actually, Ron James is a tenant who can speak. Actually, the tenants will learn to speak for themselves. And so conceivably, in year 3, this won't be needed anymore because the tenants will.
Hello, my name is Ronald James, and I'm a tenant in one of the buildings in question, which is 12701 Shaker Boulevard. We have had a great deal of difficulties in our apartment building and in 12500 and 12600 Shaker Boulevard, which is owned by a company out of New York, an LLC. Our greatest problem has been that we have not, it took us a long time to find out who actually owned the building so that we knew who we could address our complaints to. Last year in 2022, January 2022, we didn't have any heat until the end of the spring. You know, there was no heat in the building, and people had to use space heaters just to keep their apartments warm. Our heat went out again in January of this year for a whole month. There's still a few people in our apartment building that do not have heat as to this date. We've had problems with water. Water has been shut on and off. The elevators have not worked on a regular basis. They just put Band-Aids on problems, they fix the elevators, they work for a few weeks or a month, and then they break down again. Uh, from January until October of 2022, we did not have a secure door entrance. Anybody could come in and out of that building. So, we had a laundry room on the first floor. We had women who washed in the evening, and you never knew who might be in the building or in the laundry room because the door was not secured. We've had leakage from roof damage. We've also had steam heat pipes where heat has escaped because the pipes have rusted. Apartments have been ruined. The ceilings have fallen down. On the 7th floor of our building, we had water coming down from the roof water coming down from the 7th floor due to a leak in the steam pipes and in the water pipes where they
Okay,
had
can
to
I
put.
get you to focus with us? This application talks about $388,000 worth of funding that you're looking for.
I
What-
can speak to
Go
it.
ahead.
But the 25 talks about a special project, and I don't get the difference.
So we're here today to talk about.
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record, please?
I'm Sharita Mullins, and I'm with Burton Bell Car Development. I just wanted to say that the Shaker Square Alliance and the Morelands Group, they've been working as a volunteer group for 2 years to address these issues. They have partnered with Burton Bell Car to build out the infrastructure and add capacity to the work that they're doing. So the grant that we're asking for $25,000 is going to go towards hiring personnel, one person, to help build that capacity and infrastructure. Because
So you have, are you matching, is Bell Burton Carr matching that 25?
no, we're not matching. We're just helping to build support. The grant that will be matching is from the George Gunn Foundation.
So we have a list here that shows the Cleveland Foundation and the Gunn Foundation, but we don't know exactly what the funding is for. So you have 100 for Cleveland, 203.2 for the Gunn Foundation. Will that cover, are we talking about a full-time staff person or a part-time staff person?
So we propose to hire 2 people, but as of today, we only received funding to hire 1 person. That's from the George Gunn Foundation.
So they didn't give you the full 203 that you requested?
It's a 2-year funding proposal, so we received enough funding for year 1.
Okay.
To hire 1 person in year 1, and we're going to continue our fundraising efforts in hopes that we can hire 2 people during this project year.
And their work will be focused on Shaker Square?
Yes,
In the immediate vicinity, and specifically these buildings that are in bad repair.
yes.
Okay. How many buildings will this one staff person, hopefully you'll be able to raise more. So you're saying that 2 staff people will cost you with benefits and overhead approximately $388,000? So why are these additional funds in there?
So the project budget includes personnel, operating cost, and program cost. But we're only asking for this proposal, $25,000 to go towards personnel costs.
Okay. So you're saying you want 25,000 from us. It just got murky with all this other money thrown in there.
Yes.
So I need to understand what the county is specifically going to contribute to. And that is for a staff person or 2 staff
It's
people?
a partial cost for 1 staff person. That's
Okay.
what the funds will go toward.
Okay. And so you need to raise approximately, if the budget in our application, because I know things change from the time that you apply sometimes to the time that you appear before the table. You're looking for a little over $200,000 for a staff person for a 2-year period?
Not sure if it
Or
was clear.
$100,000?
George Gunn Foundation gave us 100 so far, and they have pledged another 103,200
For the second
Next
year?
year, yes.
Okay. Okay, so you've got 100, And in order to pay for everything, you need 144. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, we're still raising funds to cover that gap.
Okay, so 25 of that gap is provided here.
Correct.
Okay, and so now what you need is about 15 to 16,000. Is that, now do we all sit, are we all in the same place?
Yeah, we're in the
Okay,
same
or
place.
close enough?
Yes, yes.
Okay, for government work. If we round, we're good. Okay. All right, now I understand. That makes life simpler to me. And are there any other questions for my colleagues? Okay.
Madam Chair, just the same concern we had in other applicants, that if that money doesn't come through as a gap, what happens to the 25?
We're ready to, we have the money in place for the first.
So Shaker Square Alliance will provide the last 15,000? Who have you applied to for the last 15,000 that's needed for this first year?
Well, I'll say 5,000 has come in from the GSW fund. That is a community.
Okay. And so now you're down to 10.
We're planning to reach out to the Fowler Foundation.
Okay.
Community members.
We have several funding applications that's going to go out in Q2.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that this ordinance be referred to the next full council meeting for second reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
If there's no opposition, this legislation will move to full council for 3 full readings, since that is our tradition with ARPA funds. So you will be notified of what council meetings this will be on the agenda for, and at the third one, you should receive funding because of the positive recommendation from this committee. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you could add my name in support.
Thank you. Did you hear that, Sharon?
I did, I have that. Thank you. Resolution 2023-0050, awarding a total sum not to exceed $10,000 to City Fresh for the purchase of a replacement diesel Class 4-7 truck from the District 3 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Hi. As is our tradition, please identify yourself and give us your title and your relationship to the organization.
My name is Annikis Mauser Martinez. I am the Executive Director of City Fresh. I'm waiting for my... There we are. City Fresh is a local foods nonprofit working to create and promote a more healthy, vibrant, and just local food system. We sell affordably priced fruit farm boxes of fresh, locally grown fruits and vegetables throughout Northeast Ohio. City Fresh Farm Box shares come in 2 sizes and are purchased in advance on our website, or in person with SNAP. The way this works is folks sign up. They can order online, by mail, or in person. We run 20 weeks, June through October, and then some additional weeks at the end for a few of our locations. They're offered in 2 sizes for family or single shares, which means they feed either 3 to 5 people or 1 to 2 people. They're vegetables for the week. We accept SNAP, and we have tiered pricing, and we participate in many nutrition incentive programs, which I'm happy to tell you more about at length later. Then we go to the farms and we figure out what is fresh each week. We have 6 core farmers. They're all located within 70 miles of Cleveland. They use low-impact farming, and they have a very strong focus on soil health. So we are trying to build environmental resilience and food resilience in our region. And then folks pick up at their location, their pickup location. So we have 15 of those in Cuyahoga and Lorraine counties. They are in districts 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11. So we are serving many of you. And about 86% of our shareholders pick up at Cuyahoga stops. So that's quite a significant percentage. The stops are run primarily by volunteers, so those are folks from the neighborhood who are engaging directly with customers. This is a sort of holistic approach to helping folks learn how to eat seasonally, how to engage with their fruits and vegetables, and improve nutrition for nutrition-based diseases. Excuse me, stumble a little bit. They do a lot of recipe swaps, tips, tricks. We provide a lot of content in that regard, and nutrition education is sort of a core portion of our program. We deliver 150,000 pounds of fresh local produce to more than 900 unique customers each year. 25 to 30% of our shares are sold at limited income rates or subsidized completely through partner programs. 2/3 of our pickup locations are in low-access areas. We generate more than $100,000 of income for small farmers annually, which means those dollars stay in our region and are generally, there's a citation for this somewhere, but they produce 3 times the economic impact as those that go to places outside of our region. And more than 50 volunteers run 15 fresh stops. In 2022, our volunteers donated more than 1,500 hours. More than 1 in 4 shares were distributed to low-income households. 150,000 pounds of produce were distributed in 8,552 shares. And our focused nutrition education support, such as the Seed to Supper Challenge, inspired shareholders to get innovative with their City Fresh shares and submit 233 of their own healthy recipes. So that's one of the ways that we are really engaging with folks and helping them learn how to eat better. The grant that's on the table today is a request for $98,000, and I believe District 3 has offered us 10 of that. It is a funding gap for an all-electric vehicle that we have received funding from the Ohio EPA, the George Gunn Foundation, the Nord Family Foundation, the Green Edge Fund, as well as some private donors. And this is the funding gap that we need to meet in order to ensure delivery in June. The electric vehicle aligns with our commitment to sustainability. The program model requires reliable transportation, as you can imagine, to get to all those different districts. It's estimated to remove 35 tons of carbon from the atmosphere each year and serves as a model for the efficacy of switching to all-electric vehicles for other organizations and businesses. We have some testimonials here, so people love this program, largely. We have also had a self-reported instance of folks who 92% of our shareholders say that they eat more fruits and vegetables when they participate in this program. So this is very important work that we're doing. Our values include nutrition, community building, environmental resilience, social equity, and economic justice. Or as I like to say, we are solving all the world's problems one vegetable at a time.
Okay, how about solving individuals' problems one vegetable at a time?
We are trying.
Who is capable of buying, what do they call it, a share?
It's available to anyone.
So any council member could buy shares?
Absolutely, we would love to have you.
Okay, and for example, in District 1, where do you distribute?
I don't have the map in front of me.
Okay, that's the west side, the far west side.
Okay.
That's Councilman Kelly.
I believe we're in Westlake. Is that part of your district?
Yes, that's part of his.
I had the map in front of me, I'd be able
Okay,
to pinpoint
I'm
it.
10. Where are you in 10 between Bratnall and Cleveland Heights?
We are in Cleveland Heights. We have, Coventry is our largest stop, actually.
Do you
and we
deliver
are-
to people's homes or people have to go and pick up?
People largely pick up. We pick up at the Coventry Peace Park. We did do a program last year. We were able to pilot a program in conjunction with Produce Perks Midwest using TANF funds to do home delivery for 45 families for 16 weeks with free vegetables the whole time, and who were TANF eligible.
I don't think Mr. Kelly and I qualify.
No. I should hope not for the
But we can-
service that you are doing.
But we can afford to buy shares if
Yes.
necessary.
You can
Okay.
pick up or you can send someone. We also hope to, so we had a partnership with DoorDash and we hope to expand that, but that adds costs to individual items.
What's the average share cost?
The family share costs $35 if at the regular price. It is $22 for limited income pricing, which is self-reported. We use the honor system. And that is at 200% of the federal poverty level, so our thresholds are rather high in order to accommodate as many people as possible. Our single shares, which feed 1 to 2 people, are $22 at the full price, and $13, I get confused every year, it's winter right now, at the limited income price. Also, our SNAP customers get they get 50% off of the retail price. So when they come to pay, they get it at $18 and $11. They get this extra little bonus discount through our partnership with Produce Perks.
Questions for my colleagues? I see your hand.
So there's okay, first of all, thank you for doing this. But our legislation itself talks about a diesel replacement, but this is an electric vehicle replacing a diesel.
Correct.
So we might want to
Amend the
legislation, which I can make a motion to do, to substitute the diesel truck for an all-electric vehicle.
I thought it did say that, but I didn't
There-
look carefully at the legislation.
As City Fresh for the purchase of a replacement diesel.
Oh, it does say that.
Just for the purchase of replacement diesel. So it should say that for the purchase of a electric vehicle to replace, or for a replacement of a diesel truck. So I'm making some kind of motion just to be clear on the
Okay,
legislation.
can we have a staff person help us take care of this, please? Mr. King, are you approaching to help with the language?
Michael King, council staff. Apologies for the clerical error. Yes, the legislation should read in the short title, the 6th whereas clause, and in section 1, the purchase of an electric class 4 to 7 van rather than a replacement diesel truck.
Okay, because you talked to me, I didn't read it in its entirety. Okay, so in the 6th whereas, you are recommending an amendment there?
Yes, an amendment to all 3 sections I referenced. The short title at the very top of the legislation,
Okay,
the 6th whereas clause, and in section 1, just replace the language that's currently in there with electric class 4 to 7 van.
is that acceptable to you, Ms. Simon?
Sure. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Council President. If you would work with the clerk to get that language clarified, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Yes.
No, I just want to say thank you, and this is a high-stress thing when I was involved with one of these shares to make things with what's actually in season. So it was too stressful for me to, you have to,
You know
to
what?
come
We're-
up with what to do with some of these veggies, but I appreciate people who have families can do this.
We're week to week, and we try to make it as low stress as possible, so people,
You
you don't have to
understand the
sign up
stress,
for the
right?
whole, I have been the worst shareholder in the past. I started as a low-income client in 2007 and started volunteering with this organization in 2008, and I became program director in 2014, and I've sort of worked my way up in an organization that's about 3 people big and doesn't really have any mobility. So I'm just made of vegetables entirely now, and I still like pizza. So, it's not about doing perfect all the time. It's about harm reduction. So we're trying to get vegetables in people's homes as much as possible, and we want to make sure that that benefits our environment and our farmers and our local economy as well.
Through the chair, I've been vegan for over 25 years and understand completely the benefit of the connection to the environment is massive. And so I appreciate this effort with the electric vehicle to act locally and impact globally. Seriously, thank you.
Well, thank you. I do want to also mention, we had two ARPA proposals into council, and I believe District 7 was reviewing those proposals. The first one included capital funds for a diesel vehicle, and this second one is sort of an urgent need because we are actually in process of purchasing this. So we are gonna end up with a loan in June if we don't.
Okay,
If we don't-
so you have a way to take care of everything?
We
if you
do
don't
have a
get
backup plan. Hopefully it
B.
works.
Okay,
And District 3 was willing to commit $10,000 to that.
Okay.
But we did send this particular proposal to, I believe, all of our districts.
okay.
So if anyone has some leftover funds, we are happy to be.
Take whatever we have
will
left.
take what we can get.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Where are you located in District 8, which is the bulk of public housing, 55th Woodland area, cities like, communities like Slavic Village?
We are in Slavic Village. We have a stop right next to Daisy's on Fleet. Slavic
Daisy's.
Village is also where I live.
Okay, all right. How about in the central community, central Fairfax?
We have had stops in different locations through there, and we have always targeted low-access areas as much as possible. We have had to pull back on starting new stops because we found that we only got a few people participating in them. So participation is sort of a harder thing. We are working currently to make sure that we support BIPOC-led organizations and that we are finding other routes of supporting various organizations that are doing work in those areas. We're partnered with the Nourishing Power Network, which is a Sweatland Center initiative. And, we have plans on the horizon to do more, but we try to make things as available as possible. We are in Ohio City. We were in Public Square last year. I'm not sure where exactly that stop's going to be this year. We're in Old Brooklyn. We're in Euclid, Coventry area, Cleveland Heights, Slavic Village, Berea, which is in Cuyahoga County, Westlake at the Porter Public Library, and Lakewood.
Garfield,
Lakewood
Maple?
is Dale's, right?
Dale sent me a note saying that his funds were already accounted for, which I understand.
Garfield Heights, Maple Heights, Newburgh, Cuyahoga Heights?
We're just right there in Slavic Village right now. So we've had a lot of longstanding partnership with Slavic Village Development. So when they started their village market, and they ran that for a couple years and then didn't have the support to keep it up with their other vendors, we stayed behind and kept trying to serve that area.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
District 1 willing to contribute $1,000 toward City Friend.
So why don't we talk
Work
with
with,
staff
staff.
afterwards, so we can do an amendment for funding? I'm thinking maybe because they're in Coventry, I may need to put a little in it as well, so.
That is our premier stop because it has a very nice park. I welcome you to visit it.
I gave money for that park when I was on city council there, so.
They're renovating it right now, and we wrote a very strong letter of support for those funds as well.
So let's see what we can, if you can hold around on a little bit longer after the meeting, then we can talk with staff to see how we amend this. Okay? Mr. King, do we need to amend it now, or can we amend at the legislation afterwards? Because we haven't voted yet.
On this, we would maybe suggest amending it afterwards at the next council meeting.
Okay,
Work with the clerk staff to make
Okay.
sure it reflects the
Okay.
proper dollar amount.
okay, thank you. All right, see, your pitch came in handy today.
I'm starting to understand how this works a little bit more.
Sometimes you have
It's
to talk
crystal
to us
clear.
in person.
I know.
And on Mr. Kelly's behalf, he's in a transition. He's newly elected at the end of last year, and so your request did not go to him. It went to someone else. So that means that you need to chat him up.
I will. I got Martin Sweeney on the phone at one point, so.
Yeah, calling us is very helpful. Okay, it's now time to vote. All in favor? I'm sorry? So the question is, should we vote on the amendment now, to allow additional funds to be placed in?
Do we vote on the diesel truck amendment?
We
That's
did
what we're
vote
about
to amend the language
I
on
thought
the
there was a gentle
description,
person,
yes.
I thought there was a gentle person's agreement to amend the legislation. But we didn't vote, we started talking.
Madam
So now we
Chairwoman,
need
if I
to
could
vote.
add, I think we can handle all those in a proposed substitute. We'll put it in the council agenda packet, and I would recommend you vote on it at the council meeting on next Tuesday. That way we can see what council members want to put what in, and we'll have a total number, and then we can also make this electric vehicle amendment in that same proposed substitute. So we'll take care of that if that's okay with the
Is
council.
that acceptable? So,
So then do we need to withdraw that prior motion? And
I would for now, and then we'll correct everything in a new proposed substitute.
I withdraw my motion.
okay, is the second accepting that?
Withdraw.
Okay, the motion that was on the floor is withdrawn, and now we need a new motion to accept amendments.
So moved.
Second?
Come back. So
I withdraw that too. We're just going to come back with a new substitute, I believe.
Yeah,
We don't
I-
have to do anything in committee.
That's correct, Councilwoman. I
Okay.
would recommend just pass this out, if that's okay with you, for second reading at the next council meeting. Then we will have a proposed substitute for the whole body to consider.
Okay, so I need to give that motion, I need a motion to pass it out. Okay,
Okay, so this is a motion to move this out of committee to the next full council meeting for second reading with an anticipation of a substitute coming through.
that is correct, thank you. A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion moves forward. You'll get a substitute and some additional funding.
Thank you so much,
You're most
everyone.
welcome.
Resolution 2023-0051, awarding a total sum not to exceed $50,000 to the Julia DeBurgos Cultural Arts Center for Arts and Culture Community Programming from the District 3 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
We have one or two people here to speak to us today? Okay. Oh, you've been before. It's been a while? One of the two of you's been here before.
I have not, no.
Okay. All right, if you'd state your name and your position with the organization for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Leticia Lopez. I am the Executive Director at Julia de Burgos Cultural Arts Center, and with me is,
Gilberto Rivera. I'm the project manager, also an artist and educator with the center for a long time.
Okay, you can begin your presentation to us.
First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about an organization that is very near and dear to me. I have been the Executive Director for the past 15 years. Our organization was incorporated in 1989. We are the only Latino arts and culture center in Northeast Ohio. We are dedicated to preserving, educating, and promoting the Latino arts in the community. Our three main focuses are community, culture, and creativity. We do this through our programming. Keep going. And before I go into programming, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is we have over 30 years of being in the community, serving the community. And a few years ago, in 2018, we were introduced to Archwood United Church of Christ, which is located on the Cleveland's west side on Archwood Avenue. And the church was looking for someone or an organization to take over the building because their membership was dwindling. They're down to about 12 to 13 members on a Sunday. And this is a 20,000 square foot building that they were hoping to find somebody to care for the building. And we were introduced to them through our CDC Metro West. And this was in January of 2018. And by May of 2018, we signed a contract with them. It was a 3-year contract for us to move into the building and become tenants. And then hopefully in the 4th year, we would become the owners of the building. This building is, again, it's a 20,000 square foot building. We used to be in our spaces before. We were in 4,000 square feet. We only had one dance program, and we used to organize the Puerto Rican parade here in Cleveland. That was it. As soon as we moved into this building in 2018, we exploded. It's crazy how a space and in the right neighborhood can, what it can do for an organization. And so this is a list of all the programs we have now, from one program to a plethora of programs and workshops, and we now have 4 signature events that we do annually. Sure. So we have Feria of Cleveland, which is it's the Cleveland version of the Spring Festival in Spain. It's a flamenco event. We have, we can talk about PayPal. We have the Hispanic Heritage Month event that we do every year in September. And then we have Play Ball, which
Play Ball is a weekend dedicated to Black and brown players and the history in baseball, and it's just a fun weekend. It starts on Friday with a panel discussion, a dinner, and then over the weekend we have several games hosted by many organizations and friends. We actually hope to see you there this year. Mayor Bibb is looking forward to playing your team. Yeah, that's one of our big ones this summer.
yeah, you had a team last year. We're looking forward
Yeah, you had a
to
team
seeing
last
you
year,
this
so.
And then our 4th event is our Christmas event that we hold also annually. And in all of our events, our Hispanic Heritage Month and our Christmas event, we host about 600 to 700 people each event at our center in our building. Next. So just a little bit of statistics for you. In our building, we've served 950 youth, and this is statistics from 2022. We participated in 30 community events, and we were able to provide $75,000 to our local Latino artists. One of our really wonderful programs at the center is the Latina Image Leadership Program, which has been, it's a 12-year, we've been doing this for 12 years now with a volunteer staff. And this program is for young Latina girls ages 13 to 17. And I consider it kind of like a life skills program. And a lot of what the curriculum involves is teaching the girls how to interview, how to dress for an interview, a lot of self-care, a lot of working together in sisterhood. Lots of things other things get taught, life skills, but it's a really dynamic program that we have at the center. We just had orientation, so this year we have a cohort of 22 girls, and it's a 6-month program. Unidos por el Arte is an initiative that we were able to start because of our building. I did some work with Cuyahoga Arts and Culture regarding some racial equity issues that one of the fellowships was having. And out of that work I realized that our local Latino artists do not have a home, do not have a support system, and are not showing up in spaces where they should be. And so this initiative, Unidos por el Arte, means United by Art. So this initiative, it was our beginning of creating that support system. And on our property, on our campus, we have a house, so that we have literally made that house their home. So on the first floor, there's a gallery. On the second floor, there are 4 studio spaces for our artists to work. We currently don't charge them anything for the spaces. We also have a grant that we give them. We just notified our 10 grantees that get $5,000 each to do a project in the community. Again, our community events, there's just a list last year of all the community events that we participated in our Hispanic Heritage Month. There's Play Ball, which Gil talked to you about. We also have been able to commission our artists to do some public art. And so we have some public art up on our campus and along West 25th and Clark. There's a list of our funders and our sponsors and our partners. And finally, if you can see on the presentation, that is our main building, which is the church, and then the house that is on our property that's dedicated to our artists. About a year and a half ago, we formed what we call a Reimagination Committee, and that Reimagination Committee, their focus is on how we can, who we are in this building, who we've become in this building, and then also respecting who our founders wanted us to be. So as you can imagine, if the building is over 100 years old, has some issues, mainly ADA accessibility issues, which is very difficult for me because I have a son in a wheelchair and I cannot bring him into the building. And then the secondary issue is the HVAC system. So this Reimagination Committee worked together with Environmental Design Group to create some conceptual plans for us to see where we're at in this building and what we can and cannot do in the building. The building's a little quirky, so it's going to be quite expensive to renovate. But we are going into our first phase, hopefully, this year to create a beautiful cement ramp that goes into our basement, which has two of our main areas of where we have our events. And so hopefully that first phase will allow us to have physically disabled community members and our senior population. Also, with that, our difficulty with the ADA accessibility is that we cannot apply for national funding because of that. And like funders like Ohio Arts Council ask us what our plans are. So, and that's it. That's all for us.
My question is, the $50,000, is that just for the general programming, or what is it going to be for the ADA, or what's it going to be for?
Well, it will continue our work for the ADA, so we're going to be going into a capital campaign. The ramp will cost us about $80,000, so that will go into researching for grants. There aren't many grants for capital funds, so it's a little difficult for us, but partially, part of that money will go to having someone dedicate time to finding the grants and writing the grants for that first phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the 50,000 is part of your annual operating funding?
Yes. Yes.
And your annual operating funding is just under 400,000?
Yes.
Okay. You have a question? Go ahead.
Have you had any, there's a growing Latino population in the Arbor Park Village community of Ward 5. About 40th and Community College, 40th Quincy area is a plaza. I was curious if you'd had any engagement in that part of the city.
We very minimal, but we also, our programming is open to everyone. So we have Latino families that come from different parts of Cleveland and suburbs of Cleveland.
We may have opportunity to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes.
So, Madam Chair, do you own the church building?
We do. As a matter of fact, last year in May, the building was donated to us.
And does the church still meet there?
Yes, they still meet on Sundays. They're there for about an hour and a half. And then on the second and fourth Sunday of the month, they have a produce sale, which I'd love to talk to you about.
And do you rent space at the church building for any other meetings or events?
Yes, we do. So we are fortunate that in the building, it's an old church building, so it has a fellowship hall that we've been renting out for quinceañeras, birthday parties, showers, baby showers, bridal showers. And we also have a Spanish-speaking AA group in the building that rents the space from us. We inherited them. They've been in the building for over 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can make a motion if we're ready to move
I
this
think we're ready for a motion.
ordinance to the next full council meeting for a
Is there a
second
second?
reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You have the unanimous support of this committee. You'll be moving forward to the full council. It will need to go before council 3 times. It's highly unlikely that it won't be supported, and you won't be rewarded, and you will be rewarded for your endeavors in this project.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 2023-0004, enacting the right of county renters to pay to stay.
Okay, we have a piece of legislation before us that my colleague, Mr. Miller, initiated. I want to talk about this, even though all of the logistics are not perfect for us, because it is something, if this was a different state or a different world, we would all believe in. Mr. Miller, if you'd like to do the preamble for this, and we want to invite a couple of folks to the podium to speak to us.
So, Madam Chair and my colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to present Ordinance 2023-4, the Cuyahoga County Pay to Stay. Eviction is one of the most traumatic events that a person or family can go through. It disrupts work and family life, fractures relationships, and exacerbates mental health and addiction problems. To promote the health, economic success, and well-being of our community, it is essential that we do everything possible to eliminate unnecessary evictions. Unfortunately, Ohio is not a tenant-friendly state. It is one of only 5 states in which a person can be evicted for being a day late and $1 short on their rent. A tenant can pay the rent a day late, but the landlord may refuse the payment and say that I want you out and I'm filing for eviction regardless. Pay to stay is designed to prevent unnecessary evictions due to non-payment of rent. The legislation provides that a tenant who pays rent that is owed plus reasonable late fees prior to when a judgment for eviction is made, such payment shall be an affirmative defense against the eviction. It also provides that if a tenant makes such payment when eviction order has been made but not yet executed, the eviction order will be vacated and the tenant will be allowed to stay. Reasonable late fees for any month are defined as the greater of $25 or 5% of the monthly rent amount. I had an initial conversation about pay to stay more than 2 years ago, but at that time there were no municipal ordinances in Cuyahoga County. I felt that it would be better for municipalities to adopt ordinances that set a pattern. 8 municipalities in Cuyahoga County have now passed pay to stay. Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, Euclid, South Euclid, Lakewood, Maple Heights, Newburgh Heights, and Warrensville Heights. These ordinances are very similar but vary on some details. The municipal ordinances already cover a large portion of the county's renter population. Ordinance 2023-4 would extend pay-to-stay protection to the remainder of the county. Municipalities that have local ordinances or adopt them in the future would use their own. The county ordinance would apply elsewhere. Consideration of this ordinance will take time, and I ask my colleagues to be patient. I'll mention 2 particular considerations. The first is municipal input. Municipal ordinances trump county ordinances in Ohio. It would make no sense to pass an ordinance if several municipalities are opposed to it and would opt out as is their option. We should take enough time to invite the mayors or council leaders of any interested municipalities to come to a future committee meeting and provide us their input. The second is House Bill 430, passed last year, which preempts local rent control ordinances. Some legal scholars believe that the law, as written, preempts pay to stay as well, but others disagree. And just today, we received an opinion from our own law department saying that they believe that House Bill 430 does preempt pay to stay. The threat of preemption doesn't necessarily kill a bill. Sometimes it makes sense to accept some legal uncertainty and plow ahead. However, we should gain a better understanding of the legal landscape than we have at present. For these reasons, I'm not expecting that this ordinance will pass committee today. We're just getting the discussion started, And if it is possible that we can move forward, hopefully we'll have another hearing when we get to that point. At this point, I would like to ask the chair if you would recognize Molly Martin from NEOC and Hazel Remish, lead attorney from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, to provide some additional background information on Pay to Stay.
At this time, the chair recognizes Molly Martin and Hazel Rimish. Thank you for coming, ladies. Please identify yourself and the organization you represent.
My name is Molly Martin. I'm with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless.
Hazel Remish, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland.
Thank you all for having us today, and thank you for sponsoring this legislation, Councilmember Miller. Thank you for the introduction of the legislation. Hazel and I are here mainly to answer questions of the council members, but there are a couple of things I want to highlight about the legislation that I think would be relevant for you all in your consideration today. One is that Pay to Stay applies specifically to non-payment of rent filings. It doesn't prohibit landlords for filing for eviction for any other reasons. And that's really pertinent specifically in the city of Cleveland, where 80% of filings are for non-payment of rent. And the average amount owed for back rent is just $1,200. Councilmember Miller raised this, but national studies show that the #1 predictor of an eviction is the presence of a child in the home, and we know how much eviction relates to community instability. And Pay to Stay, in my mind, when it comes to renters' rights, is a really fair piece of legislation, because in order for it to be honored, the landlord has to be made whole, and it also helps renters who come up with the back payment to stay stably housed. In my work at the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, I've worked with a lot of renters in the 8 municipalities that have already passed Pay to Stay. And we see this as a huge piece for community education. What renters don't know can't help them. A lot of people who get a 3-day notice think that it means that they have to get out, and this is something that tenants' rights organizations like NEOC can be out in the community advocating for. I'll let Hazel talk more about this, but through the Legal Aid Society and the Right to Counsel program, they don't just get calls from renters in the city of Cleveland, they get calls from renters all over the county. And passing a countywide ordinance really provides uniform guidance for attorneys representing renters in eviction hearings. And I think it also provides a lot of guidance for judges who are hearing eviction hearings for multiple cities. Just as an example, in Bedford Municipal Court hears evictions for Warrensville Heights, I think Maple Heights, and those 2 municipalities have Pay to Stay legislation, but Garfield Heights doesn't. So it kind of creates some uniform guidance around what it means if a renter comes up with the back money owed. And one of the things I want to mention, too, about House Bill 430 is that I worked with the City of Cleveland and the Bibb administration on Pay to Stay legislation, and then most recently Warrensville Heights, and we were made aware of House Bill 40, which is why a lot of municipalities, if you look at their ordinances, they name Pay to Stay as an affirmative defense and not a right. And the reason that distinction is clear is that Pay to Stay creates a defense for a tenant facing eviction, and it doesn't regulate rental agreements. I'll let Hazel maybe say a few words on that because I'm not an attorney, but I did hand out something. It was a memo from the Ohio Poverty Law Center issuing their opinion on why they don't think that there's a preemption conflict with Pay to Stay, and that argument also matches a statement that was released by Housing Court Judge Monet Scott around House Bill 430, but I'll let you.
Through the chair, thank you so much for having us today. I just want to add a few things in addition to what Molly and what Councilmember Miller mentioned today. So Pay to Stay is a legal remedy that has been widely accepted across the nation. Ohio is only one of 5 states that don't allow tenants to rehabilitate their tenancy by offering and paying the rent before, at the time of eviction. When they're late or after they've fallen behind. We are one jurisdiction where, as Councilmember Miller mentioned, you are 1 day late, 50 cents late, and the landlord can choose to evict you. And so that's really harsh when you're balancing the rights and the rights of both the landlord and the tenant. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Pay to Stay is just codifying a defense that has existed in Ohio law for many, many, many years. So it's an equity defense, essentially saying that the burden is so much more higher on the tenant when a tenant is evicted than it is on the landlord. And so that's a defense that has been available to tenants, and it's just codifying that defense in an ordinance. And then, as we've heard both, I've presented here before on some of the right to counsel work in the city of Cleveland, but we know that evictions are really damaging to our communities, to our schools, and to our community members. They lead to employment loss, health problems, lower achievement, and higher dropout rates. There recently was a calculator that was released by the University of Arizona that calculated that that each eviction in the state of Ohio costs the state of almost $7,000 for every single eviction that is filed. And in Cuyahoga County, there's roughly about 20,000 evictions that are filed every year. Half of those are, of course, from the city of Cleveland, but the majority of those are for non-payment of rent. So I just wanted to highlight some of that. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that there really is a burden on the landlords as well in filing that eviction. So they have to turn over their unit. Oftentimes that unit might end up being vacant for some period of time. They have to, make repairs that maybe they weren't planning on it at that particular moment. So it's really something that benefits both landlords and tenants to try to make that relationship work and move forward. And so, at Legal Aid, we represent tenants who are facing eviction. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that Ohio doesn't have a unified court system. And so every municipal court interprets the laws and sets out rules and regulations that are specific to that municipality. And that's a real challenge when you're talking about an ordinance like this, where it's kind of piecemeal and not necessarily addressing an issue countywide. So I really commend you for considering this, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I have a question.
Certainly.
So I understand most of the evictions you speak of come out of the city of Cleveland. Was there a number of 80%? What did I hear?
Well, the 80%
Is what?
that I listed was for filings that were related
Filings.
to non-payment of rent.
Filings?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but it's fair to say most evictions are coming out of the city of Cleveland in the county?
About half of the eviction filings in the county are in the city of Cleveland. The other half are in the other 12
There are 18 to
municipalities.
20,000 filings on average a year, then 9,000 to 10,000 of them are in
Yep.
Cleveland.
And the city of Cleveland has declined to make legislative change to codify this other than an affirmative defense, or did they agree to do that?
The city of Cleveland did codify it as an affirmative defense, and the housing court in the city has in fact been applying the law and upholding that ordinance. So there
So
is an
Judge Scott
ordinance.
has been doing pay to stay or a version of it?
They are accepting pay to stay as a defense to an eviction. It doesn't mean that you avoid an eviction every time, because the tenant obviously has to come to court with their rent, potentially court costs, and potentially late fees. But as long as the tenant can come to court with that, the judge has been ruling in our favor. Which is really important, if I can just add, I'm sorry, because we've had so much rent assistance available over the course of the last 2-3 years because of the pandemic. So that those are funds that we would not have been able to utilize as much as we have been, thanks to pay to stay.
Madam Chair, so the city, if there's a problem with preemption, which is, we've just been presented with a legal opinion for the county that we're preempted. So I don't know where we go from here. If the affirmative defense is already available to tenants, first of all, through the state, and we have a preemption ordinance, I don't see why
I
we
haven't
would
been able
pursue.
to carefully read that. I'd like to ask them to step back from the podium and have whoever, either staff or do I see somebody from the law department, to give us an interpretation of the memo because I was traveling this morning, I didn't have a chance to read.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Michael King, council staff. The memo we received is from our law department. We received it approximately an hour or so before this committee meeting. It is attorney-client privilege, so there may be, it is this committee's decision on whether or not to waive that privilege and dive into the details of what is in that communication. But as has been stated, I mean, the bottom line of the opinion is that our law department believes that state law preempts this particular proposal. So,
Okay, I have glare on my glasses. Is that the law director I see back there?
I believe it is.
Then he can speak for himself and his staff, because I know he doesn't write all of the opinions, given the volume of the opinions that come out of the department. But this one he might be a little familiar with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Greg Huth, the Law Director, yes. And I do apologize for just getting this to you today. We've been a little short-staffed, so it took us a while to turn this one around. But we do think there are issues. I frankly would suggest that you don't waive your privilege today, and we don't get into detail. It's in the memo today, so we have time to digest, so you have time to digest this. And I would be concerned if it does lead to litigation down the road. I don't want to start talking about what our options would be here.
Do you have time to speak with myself and other members of council in the next 48 hours, so to
Certainly.
speak? Because I know that there will be a request, a public records request for this item, and that means that we need to pay attention to it fairly quickly. So depending on members' schedules, I know that Mr. Miller definitely will want some time with you. I don't blame him. This is something of importance to our communities and to our constituents. And so it is incredibly important that we understand what you're telling us. So, and our friends in the media will want information and to be able to read this item. So if you're, I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh.
I would like to direct a question to you, not to be answered here today, but for you to consider. It's as to whether you believe that there are ways this draft ordinance could be rephrased or amended to improve its prospects.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I wasn't even done with my questions about affirmative defenses. So I guess if we're done with our law director, if we can't get into the detail of the memo, we're not waiving that privilege, that's fine.
Not today.
Okay.
I guess we may waive it in the next week or two, but not today.
Yeah, my concern is, we're getting an ordinance, trying to assert an ordinance countywide just to simply add in an affirmative defense that already exists, and we risk litigation. Why are you raising your eyebrows? I was just told by legal aid that any tenant can raise the issue as an affirmative defense in an eviction.
I have to confirm that for myself, that's all.
I mean, it's an affirmative defense. You can throw anything, a stop-all waiver, unjust enrichment, whatever you want to throw in there, they can do it. But what we're being asked to do, I think at the very minimum, is to codify an affirmative defense that already exists. I don't see the point of that when we have a challenge
Ms. Hammond,
preemptively.
are you saying there may not be a need for this?
I guess that's exactly what I'm saying.
I'm just
only in light
a
of the
pedestrian who hangs out with a bunch of
I don't think it's
attorneys.
necessary to codify an affirmative defense, especially in light of when we have a state issue now, which I'm very familiar with, preemptive, reaction to everything we do here. So I'm just putting it out there. I don't think it's necessary at this point, but we'll see what we can glean from this memo.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this body needs to have conversation in relationship to the opinion issued by the law department. I don't think we can vote on anything today. What do my colleagues think?
Madam Chair.
I had a few questions.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
As I listened to the debate, if it already exists and the city of Cleveland has the bulk of them and they already have the pay to stay, the other cities, have you had conversations with them? You mentioned Maple has it, but Garfield does not. Has there been conversations with Garfield? Is there a reason why? Is it they're just unaware, or is there a reason why they don't they have not enacted it? If you know.
No, I mean, I guess it's taken 2 years. I've worked directly with the 8 municipalities that have passed it. A lot of the work to do that individual outreach to council members is, on an organization that does direct street outreach for people experiencing homelessness. So, going to the county to establish uniformity is so that that patchwork, which is laborious, doesn't have to be done. I am curious from legal aid's perspective, especially in relation to the question around codifying an existing defense, what then warrants the need for the legislation, and two, based on legal aid's presence throughout the county, if there are renters that you feel like would be covered in municipalities that don't have existing legislation.
Yeah, so just as a clarifying point, the defense that currently exists is equity. That's the defense that currently exists. This ordinance sets out a process as to how to raise that, and it empowers tenants in an ability to raise it under this particular umbrella. It is not the same exact defense from the perspective of there isn't a procedure, there isn't some way that you can go and tell a tenant, go into court and raise equity and the court's gonna buy it, right? Like, we as lawyers know that that is a defense that's available. We raise it on their behalf, but it's not something that tenants are empowered in their own to go and do. So this, on the other hand, does that specifically for tenants. It also gives the court a tool by where they can, in a uniformed way, raise that defense or empower the tenants to raise that defense. And it sets up a process as to when the tenants can raise it. So right now, a tenant might be able to show up to their hearing in court and say, I want the court to, listen to me, and I want to try to pay the rent. I have the rent available to me. I'm raising equity as a defense. And the court might still nevertheless go ahead and grant that eviction, right? Because there isn't anything that obligates the court to actually say, okay, tenant, I agree with you. There's a law in place that says that I have to hit pause and allow you to pay that rent. So the equity defense really boils down to fairness as opposed to this sort of codified way of doing it. And in terms of like what we're seeing in all of the other jurisdictions, like I mentioned, we don't have a uniformed court system. And so every single court does it differently. And it is very challenging in terms of being able to educate the community about what court is doing what, which jurisdiction you can raise it in, which jurisdiction you can't. And so having it be more unified countywide really sets that foundation so that everybody is approaching it from, essentially coming at it from the same perspective, from a more level playing field. Then, if you get an advantage that you live in Warrensville Heights as opposed to Garfield. So it really does create a more level playing field for residents who are renting.
So Hazel, let me ask this. If what you're imposing is uniformity, let me start with the ones that already have pay to stay. Since Cleveland is the largest, they see this more than anyone else. Does this legislation change what they already do in any way to their existing pay to stay? How do you bring uniformity to Cleveland, where they now would have to change what they do in any way to become uniform with everyone else?
Like the language as it's currently proposed
today.
I haven't looked at I don't know do you know if the ordinances are the same?
I actually do know the differences between the ordinances
Yeah.
since I worked with the cities. Cleveland's is a bit stronger in the sense that in their definition of tendering rent, they include third-party assistance, which was intentionally put in there since so many renters were seeking rental assistance during the COVID pandemic. But the way that this draft ordinance is worded just talks about actual cash in hand. So Cleveland's is a bit stronger for people who are getting third-party assistance from rental assistance. But they're both listed as an affirmative defense, so I think they're equal in that.
So if we were to impose this and theirs is already stronger, does that weaken what they have, or what impact does it have?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on this point, our draft proposal says that in any municipality that already has pay to stay, that the municipal ordinance which trumps county law in Ohio would continue to operate, and that this ordinance would only be operative in those other municipalities.
Okay. We still have a waiver issue. legal opinion that we all need to spend time with. So I am not prepared. I do not believe we should vote on this today. I don't think it should pass out of committee. I think it needs to stay in committee for a while. Is there anyone who differs in thought? No. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a couple of comments. First, eviction is one of the most serious problems in Cuyahoga County and beyond, so I think it's a very important discussion. Secondly, I support the chair's view that we have issues that have to be dealt with and that we're not ready to move today. And third, I think that there may be scenarios where it remains workable and helpful to pass this legislation, and there may not. So I'm open to getting more information and dealing with what the information indicates is the best path forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Madam Chair, can I make one concluding comment?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for the conversation. And I'm happy to come back in a future meeting to answer questions if that would be helpful. I think one of the things that is often unspoken about pay to stay that I think is important to raise is that a lot of folks think that pay to stay isn't necessary since so many renters don't end up coming up with the late payment. But from a community education standpoint, having clarity and having a tenant protection is telling a renter, like there are rights afforded to you under the law for doing a tenant protections event at a community center and someone from Fairview Park is there, Garfield Heights. Like there is benefit of the ordinance to apply to municipalities that do have renter populations. But the one unspoken thing about pay to stay, and it really pertains to basic legal equality under the law, is that most landlords are going to accept late payment from a renter, but the reality is that it is the quickest way to get someone out of a unit is through non-payment of rent, and oftentimes landlords will use non-payment of rent as a way to get someone out. And under pay to stay, it only applies to non-payment of rent. It doesn't prohibit a landlord for filing for any other reason, but this provides basic legal equality under the law because if you come up with the money to pay your rent, that should cure the non-payment of rent filing. If there are other reasons why someone might be getting evicted, then there are other legal channels to go that way. This kind of helps someone who's already experiencing poverty or a crisis of housing, that if there are other issues there in the relationship with the landlord, like why the tenant is not on the side of the equation where they're going to take the quickest route possible. That's kind of preying on the fact that they're low income to get them out of the unit. And I think that that's part of the benefit too, is that this is addressing something really specific, which is non-payment and might, not. Yeah, so just to say, sorry for the stumbling, is that this really helps tenants cure non-payment of rent for those filings, and it prohibits landlords for using the quickest route possible for other reasons, and that's just like a legal equality piece that we find really important for empowering renters to know their rights. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you both. If there's no other testimony or statements from my colleagues, this matter will stay in the committee. I will follow up with the law department and our staff and talk among our council members before we bring it back to committee again. Thank you so much. Is there anything else, Madam Clerk?
The final item, ordinance 2023-0007, is being held.
All right. With no other issues, is there anything miscellaneous? If not, thank you for your attendance today. This meeting is adjourned.